Hey there, I'm Theo, and I'm about to show an old game of mine that I started developing 9 years ago in Unity back when I was 15, presently called Galaxy Stranger. It's a roguelike shoot 'em up with procedural level generation, or at least that was the plan. In this dialogue, I will share the complete history of the game, including its current state, and what I plan to do now to finally finish it. Buckle up because you're about to watch about 9 months worth of progress compressed into a single video. So, how did it all start? Back in 2016, I was still learning how to code and make games in Unity. I was lucky enough to have supportive friends, and one of them even paid me to make a couple of mini-games for them. After that, I decided it was time to try my hand at a bigger game. I don't remember exactly why I chose to make a shoot 'em up, only that I really want to have a procedural level generation of some sort. I also was, and still am, in love with space and pixel art. 3D games development seemed a bit too complex to me at the time, so I decided to go for 2D. The very first thing I did was draw the pixelated red beam, because even before starting, I had this pretty cool idea of an enemy turret that rides on the beam. I also drew smaller green beams for the background, some metal sheets which were just grey squares, a space background, and of course the player spaceship. I had no idea how to draw pixel art, so it did not look great, but worked well enough as a placeholder. I started by implementing level generation, but really it was just random beam placement. It was a lot harder than expected, avoiding overlaps, spacing things correctly, but I eventually got it working. I also added some random background grey beam placement. At this point, I got what looked like a half-constructed space station, where the beams are different every time the game is launched. While not very impressive, it was a big breakthrough for me, and satisfied my procedural generation itch for some time, until I completely reworked it later. I added a simple script for controlling the spaceship with the mouse, the ability to shoot, and automatic camera scrolling, so I could finally fly through those levels I've been procedurally generating. You have no idea how excited I was. I added collision detection and an explosion when the player crashes into the beams. The time finally came to add the first enemy to the game, the turrets. They are procedurally placed on either side of the beams and can ride them in both directions, rotate almost 180 degrees, and shoot at the player. I'm actually pretty happy about how the AI turned out. They are quite smart. When the player is too far away, they try to get closer, while at the same time keeping their distance when the player gets too close. And they are hard to destroy because you have to carefully press against the beam without colliding with it. So annoying little guys. As you can see, I also updated the background a bit, and experimented with sirens for ambience, but ended up removing them. I must admit that I didn't really know what direction the game should take, or what the end goal even was. I realize now that it was a very rookie mistake. I was just aimlessly adding features to the game at this point, just for the sake of it. But hey, I was having fun, and with every new thing I added, I learned something new. I decided that it would be cool to try infinite level generation, so I refactored it to dynamically create chunks in every direction the player flew in. I added vertical camera following, so the player could fly up and down. I ended up quickly scrapping infinite generation, because it was lagging the game quite a lot, and ultimately it didn't bring any gameplay value. I kept the vertical navigation though, which I feel is not often encountered in shoot 'em up games, and made my game stand out a bit. I added the first enemy ship to the game, which I creatively named S1. Unlike the tourists though, I'm really not happy with its AI. It just flies forward and shoots periodically. I barely got them to avoid flying into the beams. Well, most of the time. I decided to rework it later, but that never happened. I implemented a simple main menu with an intro screen, options and credits, as well as a temporary game over screen, which I improved later. Added some free music and sound effects I found online, and experimented with difficulty levels, which just modified the dealt and received damage. I refactored the procedural generation for the third time. This time, instead of placing every single beam and enemy randomly, which was starting to look too chaotic, I switched to hand main layer blocks, which then spawned within the grid. This resulted in much more coherent looking levels, and this generation method is what I ended up sticking with. I then added a third enemy, Mine, which spawns in bulk and causes the player to explode on collision. Not a particularly dangerous enemy, but it did alter the gameplay in a positive way, giving the player a choice to carve a path through them, or find an alternate route. Then I decided it was time for important art style changes. I switched the space background to a more neutral grey one. I liked how the red beams looked against it. and I noticed that the tinted backgrounds began to tire the eyes after a while. I completely redrew the player and the enemies, and then decided to give enemies the same treatment as I did with the background, and redrew them all in grey colors with yellow accents. I think this is the point the game finally established its visual identity. Earlier, I realized that the fighting space felt too narrow, with little opportunity for various maneuvers. So I decided to zoom out the camera quite a bit, which made the combat a lot more dynamic and engaging. However, I realized just now that it caused the pixel art to look too high-res. So I went back and redo everything again, this time with fewer pixels. This is the look the game has to this day, and I'm pretty happy with it. Then I added a bunch of new enemies. I added a new laser enemy, which one-shots the player. A machine gun ship, which shoots plasma bullets from 2 barrels in quick succession. And finally, a freezer ship, which shoots sticky glue at the player, paralyzing their movement for a few seconds, making them vulnerable to attacks and collisions. And the final addition before I shelved the game, a very epic boss, which I won't spoil at the moment. Phew, and that wraps up the history of the development. If you are still here, wow, I don't know what I did to deserve such a patient viewer, but thank you for sticking with me. So, why did I abandon the game after working so hard on it for 9 months? Well, as I alluded to earlier, the game lacked a clear direction, and I just didn't know what to do with it next. And frankly, I just got tired after working on it for so long. So, unfortunately, I burnt out, a problem that many novice developers like myself face. It wasn't all for nothing though, since I got a lot of valuable experience from this game that helped me through these years, even up to this day. I moved on to other projects, thinking I would return to this game someday, and eventually completely forgot about it. Until now that is. Time to give the game the proper ending it deserves, in gratitude for all the experience and joy it brought me back then. So here I am, 9 years later. What are my plans for the game? Well, I need to start with defining a clear scope for the game, with an end goal in mind. The game was initially intended to be a sort of infinite roguelike shooter with lots of weapons, enemies and bosses. But as it stands, it's still an incredible amount of work to get the game there. And if I were to tackle it once more, there is a big chance I will just end up burning out again. Instead, I'm considering shifting the focus to a more linear story-based experience, with a fixed number of levels, and that final epic boss I mentioned. I got a good foundation in place, with a basic gameplay loop, and lots of enemies already in the game. So, my next steps will include implementing a proper level progression system, a dialogue box for conveying the story, and perhaps a bit more content to make the levels feel more varied as the game progresses. But I'd like to know what you think. Does this new direction make sense for the game? Let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. I'm really excited to finally bring this game back to life, and I hope you stick around to see it happen. See you in the next one.